6:35 a.m., January 31, 1991, Persian Gulf. An AC-130 gunship sends a mayday call. We've been hit. We're going down. Moments later, Spirit 03 crashes into the Persian Gulf. All 14 crew members killed instantly. No survivors. It's the only Air Force fixed-wing aircraft shot down by enemy fire during Operation Desert Storm, the largest single loss of American lives by any Air Force unit during the entire war. And it happened because the crew stayed on station too long, choosing to protect Marines on the ground instead of retreating to safety as the sun came up. This is the story of Spirit 03. The AC-130 Spectre gunship that refused to leave when Marines needed fire support. The 14 Special Operations Airmen who knew they were in danger and stayed anyway. And the sacrifice that changed how the Air Force protects its gunships. To understand what happened to Spirit 03, you have to understand what an AC-130 gunship is, and why flying one in daylight is a death sentence. The AC-130 is a modified C-130 Hercules transport aircraft converted into a flying artillery platform. The AC-130H Spectre variant that Spirit 03 flew carried devastating firepower: two 20mm M61 Vulcan rotary cannons, one 40mm L60 Bofors cannon, and one 105mm M102 howitzer. Yes, a howitzer, mounted in the side of an aircraft, firing shells the size of a football. The AC-130 orbits the battlefield in a left-hand pylon turn, allowing the side-mounted guns to continuously engage targets below. Night vision sensors, infrared targeting systems, and advanced fire control computers make the AC-130 the most accurate close air support platform in existence. Ground troops call it the Angel of Death. But the AC-130 has one fatal weakness. It's slow, flies low, and has no defensive countermeasures beyond chaff and flares. At night, under the cover of darkness, AC-130s are nearly invulnerable. Iraqi air defenses can't see them. Surface-to-air missiles can't lock on. In daylight, they're sitting ducks. AC-130 crews had one ironclad rule: be out of hostile airspace before dawn. The moment the sun starts coming up, you leave. No exceptions. On January 31, 1991, the crew of Spirit 03 broke that rule. The Battle of Khafji began on January 29, 1991. Iraqi forces, over 2,000 troops from the 5th Mechanized Division and 3rd Armored Division, crossed the border from Kuwait into Saudi Arabia and seized the coastal town of Khafji. It was the first major ground engagement of Operation Desert Storm. Saddam Hussein wanted to draw coalition forces into a costly urban battle, hoping to inflict casualties that would turn American public opinion against the war. Iraqi forces captured the city and dug in, expecting a brutal fight. Coalition commanders responded with overwhelming air power. Saudi and Qatari ground forces would retake the city, but they'd do it with constant air support. Every coalition aircraft within range was tasked to support the Battle of Khafji, including 3 AC-130 Spectre gunships from the 16th Special Operations Squadron based at Hurlburt Field, Florida. Their call signs: Spirit 01, Spirit 02, and Spirit 03. On the night of January 30th, all 3 gunships orbited over Khafji, hunting Iraqi armor and vehicles. They destroyed fuel trucks, armored personnel carriers, anti-aircraft artillery sites, command posts. The AC-130s were slaughtering Iraqi forces trying to reinforce Khafji or retreat back into Kuwait. But Iraqi air defenses were thick. Anti-aircraft artillery fire lit up the night sky. Surface-to-air missiles launched toward the orbiting gunships. The crews could see tracers arcing toward them, missiles streaking through the darkness. They kept firing. By early morning on January 31st, Spirit 01 and Spirit 02 had expended most of their ammunition and were running low on fuel. As dawn approached, both aircraft departed the combat zone and headed back to base. Standard procedure: leave before daylight. Spirit 03 remained on station. The crew of Spirit 03 had fuel, they had ammunition, and Marines on the ground were still calling for fire support. An Iraqi rocket battery was firing at coalition positions. It needed to be destroyed. Now. Spirit 03's aircraft commander was Major Paul Weaver, a 1979 graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, experienced, professional, one of the best special operations pilots in the Air Force. He knew the rule about daylight. Every AC-130 crew knew the rule. But Marines were in contact, and Spirit 03 was the only gunship still overhead. Weaver made the call: they'd stay, hit the rocket battery, then get out. At 6 a.m., Spirit 03 was still circling over Khafji. The sun was coming up, visibility improving. Iraqi air defense crews could now see the AC-130 orbiting overhead, a slow, lumbering target at low altitude. The crew fired on the Iraqi rocket battery. Direct hits, target destroyed, mission accomplished. Spirit 03 declared bingo fuel, just enough gas to make it back to base, time to leave. But as the gunship turned to depart, another call came in. More targets, Marines needed fire support. The crew kept firing. They'd already stayed past dawn. A few more minutes wouldn't matter, right? At 6:35 a.m., an Iraqi soldier fired a man-portable surface-to-air missile. Sources vary on the type. Some say an SA-7 Grail, a Soviet-designed shoulder-launched missile. Others say it was a French-made Roland Sam. Either way, the missile locked onto the slow-moving AC-130. The crew had no warning, no radar warning receiver alert, no missile launch detection, just a man on the ground with a heat-seeking missile pointed at the biggest, slowest target in the sky. The missile hit. Spirit 03 sent a mayday call: we've been hit. And then the aircraft went silent. The AC-130 crashed into the Persian Gulf, approximately 110 kilometers south of Kuwait City. Search and rescue helicopters scrambled immediately. Other coalition aircraft converged on the crash site. They found wreckage, debris floating on the surface, but no survivors. All 14 crew members were killed on impact or drowned in the crash. Major Paul Weaver, aircraft commander; Captain Thomas Bland, pilot; Captain Arthur Galvan, navigator; Captain William Grimm, fire control officer; Captain Dixon Walters, electronic warfare officer; Senior Master Sergeant Paul Buege, flight engineer; Senior Master Sergeant Jim May, television sensor operator; Technical Sergeant Robert Hodges, infrared detection set operator; Technical Sergeant John Oelschlager, loadmaster; Staff Sergeant Paul Instrument, illuminator operator; Staff Sergeant Mark Hubbell, scanner; Sergeant Damon Kanuha, gunner; Airman First Class Joseph Bentz, gunner. 14 names, 14 families, 14 men who chose to stay and protect Marines on the ground, knowing the risk, accepting it. It was the largest single loss of life by any Air Force unit during Operation Desert Storm. Out of 20 Air Force personnel killed by hostile action during the entire war, 14 died aboard Spirit 03. The loss of Spirit 03 represented 10% of the entire AC-130H fleet. 1 aircraft, 1 crew, 1 mission, gone. In the months and years that followed, the story of Spirit 03 became complicated, controversial, painful. Some official accounts suggested the crew had made a mistake, that they'd knowingly violated procedures by staying in daylight, that they'd put themselves at unnecessary risk. The implication, they were to blame for their own deaths. Others, particularly those in the special operations community, saw it differently. The crew of Spirit 03 hadn't made a mistake, they'd made a choice. Marines on the ground needed fire support. Spirit 03 was the only asset available, so they stayed. That's what special operations airmen do, protect the guys on the ground, no matter what. The debate over what happened and who was responsible created tension within the Air Force. Were Weaver and his crew heroes who sacrificed themselves for Marines, or had they made a tactical error that cost 14 lives? The truth, as always, is more complex. AWACS controllers had been calling Spirit 03 throughout the early morning, urging them to leave the combat zone. The crew knew they were in danger. They weren't reckless. They weren't ignoring warnings. But a Marine forward air controller was still calling targets. Iraqi forces were still engaging coalition ground units, and the AC-130 was the most effective weapon available to suppress those threats. Major Paul Weaver made a command decision: stay on station, continue the mission, accept the risk. That's not a mistake. That's leadership. That's the definition of what special operations forces do: accomplish the mission, even at great personal cost. The legacy of Spirit 03 isn't just about loss. It's about how the Air Force changed after January 31st, 1991. No AC-130 has been shot down by enemy fire in the 33 years since Spirit 03 crashed. Not one. Not in Iraq in 2003. Not in Afghanistan during 20 years of war. Not in any of the dozens of conflicts where AC-130 gunships have operated. Why? Because the Air Force learned from Spirit 03. New defensive countermeasures were developed. Better radar warning receivers, missile approach warning systems, improved chaff and flare dispensers. Tactics changed. AC-130s now operate at higher altitudes in contested airspace. Communications improved between AWACS controllers and gunship crews. Mission planning became more rigorous about daylight exposure. And the biggest change, a cultural shift. The AC-130 community, pilots, gunners, sensor operators, everyone, internalized the lesson of Spirit 03. Know the threat, respect the threat, accomplish the mission, but don't stay too long. Brigadier General Brad Hicks, who flew AC-130s during Desert Storm and later commanded Special Operations Forces, wrote, "The lessons passed on to crews trained since that fateful day are the true legacy of Spirit 03. 14 men died so that future crews wouldn't have to. That's the legacy." Every year on January 31st, the 16th Special Operations Squadron conducts a memorial flight over Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico. An AC-130 flies the pattern Spirit 03 would have flown. Crews conduct live-fire training at the Spirit Range at Melrose Air Force Range, named in honor of the fallen crew. The squadron building at Cannon is filled with plaques and memorials. "Where there is spirit, there is freedom" appears throughout the facility. The motto isn't just words. It's a reminder of what the crew of Spirit 03 believed in, what they died for. In May 2023, a memorial was dedicated at the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. A 1/10 scale bronze AC-130, commissioned by the class of 1979, Major Paul Weaver's graduating class. Over 300 people attended the ceremony, including Weaver's sisters. And at Hurlburt Field, Florida, the home base of the 16th Special Operations Squadron, there's a memorial in the air park. Family members visit. Old crew chiefs who maintained Spirit 03 come to pay respects. Young airmen, too young to remember Desert Storm, learn the story. Because that's what memorials do. They remember, they teach, they ensure that sacrifice isn't forgotten. The crew of Spirit 03 was awarded the Silver Star and Purple Heart medals. Citations read that Major Weaver led his aircrew to engage the Iraqi missile site and continued his attack under heavy anti-aircraft artillery fire, preventing a missile attack on coalition forces. They destroyed 21 fuel trucks, 10 armored personnel carriers, and multiple anti-aircraft artillery sites during the Battle of Khafji. Their actions played a decisive role in retaking the city, and holding it for the duration of hostilities. But the numbers don't capture what really happened. 14 Special Operations Airmen, the best of the best, volunteers for the most dangerous missions, stayed on station when they should have left. Because Marines on the ground needed them. Because that's what you do when brothers are in contact. They paid with their lives. If you're watching this and you served in special operations, or if you knew someone who did, you understand. The mission comes first. The guy on the ground comes first. Your own safety comes last. That's not bravado, that's the code. And on January 31st, 1991, 14 airmen lived that code and died because of it. Spirit 03 is the last AC-130 gunship lost in combat. And if the Air Force has learned its lessons well, it will remain the last. The crew of Spirit 03 made sure of that. If you served with AC-130s or knew anyone aboard Spirit 03, share your memories in the comments. And subscribe to Gulf War Chronicles for more untold stories from Desert Storm. Until next time,